What up? What up? What up? It's your man Sean P coming in live. This is the Sean P Experience on YouTube. I have an amazing, wonderful guest. I've been anticipating this show for months. Just looking forward to it. I'm glad it's finally here. I'm excited. I have Dr. Lindsey Stewart on the Sean P Experience. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Man, I'm doing real good. I'm feeling good. I just can't wait to get into this book. I did the audio version of the book. I played it like multiple times going through it. It's so incredible. You cover so many aspects of culture and things that we would never think connect to the past and the way you connected it. So I thoroughly enjoyed the book.
Okay. I've been hearing a lot of people like the audio, which is great to hear.
Yes, your audio narrator did a phenomenal job. Give
She
them
did
props.
such a good job. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna go into your official introduction, right? We have Dr. Lindsey Stewart, the thinker and the writer, who shines a light on Black women voices, stories, and power. She digs into politics, culture, and everyday life in the South, showing us new ways to see resilience, creativity, and freedom. Dr. Lindsey Stewart.
Thanks for having me on the show.
So my first question, this is a regional cultural question. I love asking my Southern writers, like, for a long time, some of the greatest writers, artists come from the South. Why do you think the region still doesn't always get the respect it deserves intellectually and culturally?
Yeah. So my first book, The Politics of Black Joy, deals a little bit with this, with how much the South just gets looked down upon. And I argue in that book that a lot of it is because the South gets read as black and black is devalued in America. But the truth of it is, we create a lot of what is American culture. A lot of it comes from the South.
I think I realized this about 3 or 4 years ago during this process. I'm like, wait a minute. Most of the National Book of the Year award winners are Southern writers.
hmm
Maurice Carlos Ruffins and Dr. Imani Perry's and Jamila
Right.
Minnick and Kiese Lamb. You rattle off all these monumental writers of today. They're from the
Mhm.
South.
I mean, Imani Perry is such a treasure. Dear God. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been blessed to have her on the show like 3 times, trying to make it four. But she's a
Okay.
repeated guest and
Yeah.
one of my favorite writers of today's current time for sure, Dr. Imani Perry.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So your work has been featured recently in Time Magazine and The Atlantic. I'm a huge Atlantic fan for years. Love that publication. What was it like seeing your work highlighted in these major national or international publications?
Um, I mean, it was really a dream come true in some ways. I've always wanted to be a writer. I was always hoping that it would get this sort of press. It was also a little unnerving. So I looked at the Facebook post that the Atlantic posted, and dear God, the comments. I was just so surprised to see the vitriol. I think it came from trolls who saw that the word slavery was in the title, so they were just coming out there. One person actually said, well, there were no Africans brought to the US. Like, what? How did you think we get here? But yeah, I wasn't prepared for the kind of ignorance. But it was really nice to see how many people connected with the book. I mean, that's just been so moving to me. Because, when you're writing a book, you always think, like, I think it's good. I hope that other people think it's good. But to hear other people say, this reminds me of my grandma, or this is something that I grew up with, or I can see me differently now, like that just makes my day every day.
And so I mentioned the movie Sinners before we came on the air, but the movie Sinners really sparked curiosity across
Mm.
the world about magic, voodoo, herbal medicine, the blues, all these things. So whenever Sinners came out, what did you think about like you know for a fact your book is right there in line with this, and then Sinners come out. How were you feeling whenever that came out?
Well, there's a old was it I think Kirk Franklin song that my mom used to love about, God ordering your steps. I'm like, yeah, my steps are ordered because that came right on time. for this book. I had no idea that was in the works, but when I saw it, immediately I was like, "Ooh, Annie is a Conjure woman. People are gonna read this book now," and they did it so well.
What was some of the I mean, I know it's been months away now, but what are some of the things that stood out to you in the film? What did you grab with your deep understanding of these things more than a layperson? Like they were doing so much.
Oh my goodness, yes. And that music scene too was just everybody talks about it 'cause it was just so powerful. I mean, the things that stood out to me, one, the setting, because it was filmed in Louisiana, in Johnsonville. I've been on that street several times. So it's like, oh, I know where that is. The other thing that stood out to me was the way that they tried to handle Christianity and how magic relates to Christianity. And the message of the film is like we shouldn't have to give this up. That this is something that our ancestors used for strength and used to get through horrible things, and we don't have to give it up. And that the thought that you have to give it up comes from the oppressors. Like I felt like that was just such a powerful message that came out in the film. I was really happy to see that.
Yeah, sure, definitely. So with that being said, when it comes to like a lot of books coming out right now, they have a conjure woman of some sort. They have
Mhm.
some practices and rituals. So do you think we're going to have a renaissance in the black art and storytelling centered around ancestry and innovation?
Maybe. But I also think there are just some things that we've already been doing that we continue to do. And I hope that with the book, people will see it differently. Like the meals that we eat, the hairstyles that we love, even some of our clothes. We've been kind of drawing on the spiritual world forever. And I hope that when people read the book, they can see that you are part of this tradition too. It's not like there's new stuff that you got to do. You can if you want. But if you're black and especially raised in the South, you already have some access to this.
So you mentioned in the book about I believe it's your great grandmother was the candy lady, right? So tell
Mhm.
me about the significance of her in your life, your family tree. Tell me about your great grandmother.
She was a really powerful woman, and really didn't take any mess. She loved to gossip. I love that about her. But anyway, she was an amazing cook, and she was a confectioner, so she did a lot of sweets. And in Louisiana, we're known for pralines, but we're also known for or pecan candy, but we're also known for a whole bunch of really sweet delicacies, and she was also known for that. Her homemade caramel popcorn was really really good. Her She used to make this thing called date roll candy. I don't see it very much anymore, but it was a little bit like a fudge. So she actually owned her own store during Jim Crow and was selling these treats. And one of the things that I was interested in was, okay, I go through this 400-year history, but where were kind of conjure women when I was growing up? And for me, it was the candy lady. It was that black woman in the neighborhood who watched you while you just came out of school, who, if you were sick, she'd give you medicine. Maybe she even made some of her own medicine, made some salves, or gave you Vicks Vapor Rub. She usually had something on in the stove because a lot of us didn't have food or were, hungry right after school. And she was really this person in the community that she was one of those people that kind of gave us those traditions and gave us our history and reminded us of who we were. I'm named after my great grandmother, so it was kind of nice for me to see how my own family fits into this tradition. My great grandmother was making salves, like Vicks Vapor Rub. She was also hanging, I think it's called Afeta bags around people's necks. She was doing all that stuff, and I'm really glad I got to see her at least get to know her a little bit in my life. She died when I was a teenager.
Nah, that's powerful. That's powerful, man. So like tell me about this topic in particular, the black conjure women. What was the thing that was a spark where it's like, you know what? Like this the one I want to deep dive on this 400 years covered. What was the moment that made you say this has to be a book? I got to do my research.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was during COVID, and I was getting kind of down with, every day you watch the news, there was people dying everywhere. We were all shut up in our houses. Um, and then like we were also getting the news of police brutality, and we were just seeing that on the screen all the time, with George Floyd and whatnot. And there was that huge protest. So I was just trying to figure out, well, how did people get through kind of worse times than this? Like they survived. How did they survive? And I started first digging into the medicine and figuring out what people did back in the day when there were pandemics like yellow fever. And these conjure women came up, and they were better at healing people than the doctors because people didn't know about viruses in the 18th, 19th, early 19th century, by and large. So the doctors were doing things like bloodletting you, taking your blood out, and there was a reason why they did it, but it really didn't help very much. And in some cases made you worse. But these women were giving you teas and salves and baths and kind of helping your immune system fight off the fever. And I was like, man, that's really fascinating. And Black women don't get credit for this. And then the more I dug into it, the more I looked at interviews of ex-slaves, the more I realized, no, there's a whole tradition that spans a lot of things, not just medicine, but textiles, um, symbols like mermaids. Just it blew my mind researching.
So, like you said, 400 years covered. Like, give us a snapshot of like what was your research process like? Did it entail like going to archives, interviews, oral tradition? Like, what was that process?
hmm I mean, quite a bit of it was going through the Federal Writers Project, which is a huge, massive archive that you actually can get access to online. And I think it's free access. And it's just people who, during the 1930s and 1940s, went out into Black communities, found people who had been enslaved, and got their stories down. So that was the bulk of my research. I also relied on people from Nigeria who were writing about West African religions. I really relied heavily on them because there's a lot that I just don't know, and they were experts on it. There was a lot of hoodoo practitioners that I relied on as well who have written some books. Um, there's my own family, right? Doing interviews with them, learning what they remember, and how they remember some of these things. And also friends. Like I found out that one of my friends, her enslaved ancestors, were using a salve that was a lot like Vicks Vapor Rub. And I found out that through social media. I just put up a post, and she was like, "Oh, well, my family says that this guy stole the recipe." So it was just a lot of different things. Also, music. I mean, the process was wild. I had to read so much in so many different areas: history, oral history, cookbooks, um, archaeology, like just so much.
So I love asking this question to my researchers. I know everything can't make it to the book because the book could be a
Right.
1,000 pages, right? So my question is like, what's something that's not in the book that you wish, like, man, I wish I could have put that in the book.
hmm hmm I mean, I definitely wish I could have said more about hair. And my editor is like, "Oh, I want a whole book on this hair stuff." But I came to that late and was like, "Oh man, I wish I had a few chapters devoted to Black women's hairstyles." Um, I definitely wanted to dive deeper into mermaids and kind of stuff that was going on in the Gullah Geechee community. I didn't really get to focus so much on them, um, because I'm from Louisiana, so that took up a lot of my focus. Louisiana's like half the book, but there are other communities that practice this stuff, and I wanted to get to all of it. you know.
So with that being said, I know you probably can't say it, but will there be another book about some of those things? I mean, you have the research already there.
Right. So right now I'm toying with the idea of writing a Conjure Woman cookbook, so delving more into the food. Um, it's so hard to pry recipes from your family though. So a lot of this will depend on will my family give up those recipes. um, Especially those from my great grandmother. She's got them somewhere. You know how a lot of these old women they had stuff in these like cookie tins. Somebody misplaced the cookie tin, so we're just trying to find it. But it'd be amazing if I could get that. I'm also working on a novel, kind of looking at how during Reconstruction there were these Chinese men who, in a lot of ways, were tricked into coming over to work on plantations, and were kind of um, former slave owners wanted to replace black people with these Chinese male laborers, but a lot of these men ended up having relationships with black women, and that was something that I was like really excited and centers to see that they brought up Chinese people in the South. But I was looking for, but where are the Chinese black relationships? Because once you do your DNA test, if you're from like Mississippi, Lower Louisiana, you might be surprised when Chinese pops up in that result, and that's a testament to there was some stuff going on there. I really want to learn more about that.
Well, let's kind of tease it out a little bit because I'm here in Louisiana right now as we speak. I'm in St. Martinville, Louisiana. But like in this city and the city where I'm from, there is that like Chinese population or Asian community
Hmm.
besides just Chinese. But like at school, they always stay to themselves. They have all the stores in town. They own all the gas stations, the corner
Hmm.
stores,
Hmm.
other
Hmm.
kind of places, the hair stores, of course. But like you never really see them in town. I don't see them at Walmart. I don't
Right.
see them when I'm going to get certain things. I only see them at these places. So let's
Hmm.
think about that relationship a little bit. It's complex.
Yeah. I mean, it's so complicated, but it's really, I think it's a bigger story about how in America, um, uh, sometimes you get seduced by the kind of dream of having property, getting wealthy, and whatnot. And there's a time when, particularly Chinese people in the 1870s, they weren't considered white, they weren't really considered black either, but they were considered in Jim Crow, Jim Crow South, as lower than white people. So they ended up being in our communities. They were the ones running our grocery stores, right? And a lot of those relations were cordial, were friendly enough so that there were some children that came out of those relationships. And what I'm really trying to research and figure out is what was the moment where we got separated and it became we're going to keep to ourselves and you black people are over here. I think a lot of it had to do with how Chinese people were in some places given a little bit more opportunity. So I think that sometimes they saw that as I'm gonna I'm gonna get out of this oppression and rise a little bit. But usually what that means is you have to kind of like kick black people down. Um, and I'm interested in how they navigated that.
Because even like when it comes to martial arts, right? When I was a little small kid, I've been big on martial arts. And a lot of people always wonder about the black and the Asian community
Mhm.
connection to
Mhm.
martial arts, even in our music, our
Mhm.
fashion sometimes, other things. We have this
Mhm.
automatic connection to that
Yeah.
particular part of life and can never explain like the why. Why is it so appealing to us, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, part of it is they may have been in our family, but I do think that there are similarities across West African cultures and some Chinese aspects of Chinese culture. They have a strong medicinal tradition. They have a strong textile tradition. Right? They have really interesting worship rituals and ancestor veneration and things that we also have. So I could see how we could get along during Reconstruction. And part of why I'm interested in the 1870s, 1880s, even 1890s is there is a moment where our country, I feel like, could have turned around and really done right, not just by Black people, but by kind of a lot of non-white people, and they didn't. Right. So I'm really fascinated with that moment of what could America have become? You
That might be a title right there, my friend. What I mean, compared to today's culture, today's time frame, what's happening, what
mhm.
could America have become?
Mhm.
Besides making it great again, forget that. What could have been? You know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sad to
So
me that we're not there.
for the average everyday layperson watching this, what
Mhm.
does the word conjure mean? I like breaking down words for people to get on board and catch up.
Yeah. So when I'm talking about conjure, I'm talking about specific uh, religious practices or traditions that came from West Africa and got mixed up with Christianity or got mixed up with Islam. And these practices were used to manage people's luck. Um, during slavery, we were in a really horrible situation, and we were really trying to figure out how do we keep it from getting worse. So that was where a lot of our medicine came from. It came out of we know about these herbs and roots, and we're gonna do some things that are preventative to keep you from getting sick because that will make our situation worse, right? We're gonna teach you these prayers so that you can have some sort of inner strength, so that you can make it through slavery, right? It's those sort of things that I'm thinking about as conjure. So with my students, I like to tell them because I'm in Memphis. A lot of them are from the South. So I tell them if you've ever on New Year's had black eyed peas, collard greens, and cornbread, you have done conjure, right? Because that meal is about shoring up your luck for the next year.
So being here in the South, to be honest, of course the Bible Belt is super on Christianity and things like that. I live in Saint Martinville, so of course a lot of Catholicism in this particular city, right? And,
Hmm.
and we're always taught to be scared to death of anything dealing with the voodoo and all these things. You hear all these things about, like you said in the book, about eating spaghetti sauce from a woman.
Hmm. Hmm.
All these things just it's kind of ingrained in you indirectly as a kid.
Yeah.
So when a person says that they're scared of it or they feel it's demonic or evil, like what do you say to that?
Um, well, two things. I try to tell them that, well, your ancestors, a lot of them didn't feel like they needed to choose between these herbs and roots and Jesus. They use both because you need as much help as you can get as a black person. So a lot of our ancestors didn't feel the need to choose. A lot of this stuff, these practices, were just ways to enhance God's power, not um, replace God. So I try to tell them that. I also try to tell them, like, okay, well, think about American history. Think about where we are in this country. A lot of the attitudes towards voodoo, hoodoo, conjure comes out of um, enslaved people using that stuff to rebel against slavery. So the slave owners wanted to say that that stuff was evil, and that sort of belief continues on of demonizing these practices that back in the day helped us get free.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So in our community, if somebody has a real good meal, we say something like, "Man, she put her foot in that dish." What's the spiritual meaning behind the phrase "she put her foot in it"? And what's the root of that phrase?
That was one of my favorite parts of the book. Um, so my theory, because there are lots of theories about where this comes from. My theory is that um, in West Africa, and in particular among the Yoruba, the big toe is revered. The big toe is considered your Ipori. It's kind of like the spiritual essence that's shaped by your ancestors. So um, back in the day, they would even do libations to the big toe as a way of revering the ancestors. It was thought that you have to give that reverence to the ancestors because they're the ones that guide your path, just like the big toe guide your foot forward. So you gotta love the big toe. And then when I was looking at all these interviews, I realized that um, a lot of enslaved Black people and also during the Reconstruction period, a lot of newly freed Black people would say things like, um, "Conjure goes through the big toe, or goes through the foot and comes out, goes out through the foot, comes in through the foot." And that made me think, like, oh, so, a lot of things get mixed up, lost, or replaced. Um, Once you come from West Africa and go through centuries of slavery where a lot of your practices are repressed. So I think that in Conjure, we still have that belief in the big toe. We still have, but it's kind of replaced with the whole foot. And there's this thought that your heart, your soul, your essence is in your foot, right? So when a woman puts her foot in her food, right, we mean that she's cooked with her whole heart and soul. That comes from, I would say, conjure, and the idea that your foot has part of your essence, has part of your ancestral essence.
I love that. I love that. Let's keep the food theme going right quick, right? So you explained in the book about the concept of red beans and rice becoming a Monday tradition, and give us the backstory on that. Now that was something new to me. I've never recall seeing my family do it on a certain day of the week, particular. But break that down for the audience.
Huh. That's funny. I grew up in Baton Rouge, so we had it every Monday. And even at school in the cafeteria, that's what you had every Monday. And I think it was there in New Orleans as well, and that's where it comes from, New Orleans. So I think in order to kind of understand where red beans and rice comes from, you have to remember that we had a lot of people from Haiti that came over to New Orleans, and a lot of their traditions kind of mixed with ours. So they had a dish with black beans and rice, sorry, with red beans and rice. We were using black eyed peas, and somehow or another, we started replacing black eyed peas with red beans. And black eyed peas were a favorite food of many of the gods in West Africa. So it had a lot of spiritual significance to West Africans. And I argue in the book that red beans started to take on a lot of that significance too. So red beans became the way that we use black eyed peas on New Year's. A lot of people in Louisiana use red beans on Mondays. It's a way to shore up your luck for the coming week. And Monday's a very special day in voodoo. In some communities, it's believed that Monday is favored by Papa Leba or the Risha Eshu, basically the god of the crossroads who controls luck, right? So you're kind of making an offering to them when you're cooking those red beans.
And also break down in the book, you mentioned how like the mothers doing the laundry and everything, they can put a pot of red beans on and they can still do
Hmm.
their tasks while the red beans, doing this thing simultaneously.
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
that breakdown.
yeah. I mean, if you buy like Zatarain's, you'll see that on the box, right? That red beans and rice was something that started way back in the day. We put on one pot with the beans and one pot with the laundry, and because we didn't have washing machines and things like that, it was a lot of manual labor to wash, right? So you're kind of focused on the laundry while the beans are kind of cooking on their own. And that's true, right? And a lot of that comes from, think about people who were doing the washing in those days. A lot of them were Black women who were washerwomen in the city. So they were doing that work of doing the laundry and cooking the red beans, especially because a lot of it was outside. So we were already doing that kind of work. And what's interesting to me is that there was a tradition in New Orleans where a lot of Black women who were really responsible for a lot of the culinary traditions in New Orleans. They were out selling stuff, right? And kind of making money as a way to buy their own freedom sometimes, or just kind of get some money, make a living. And sometimes they would sell prepackaged stuff. So I argue that they were kind of like the precursors to Zatarain's. They could sell you for like $5, equivalent to what's $5 now. all that you would need to make a dish of red beans. And they were really important to bringing that dish out of the Black community and into the community at large. Because, a lot of people didn't have access to plantations or access to um, Negro mammies who cooked on the plantations. It was still very segregated. So they're kind of responsible for making dishes like gumbo, red beans and rice kind of a national phenomenon.
I didn't realize I was in the military and I was stationed in California, San Diego. I didn't realize, well, it's 25 years ago, first of all, but like so many of our seasonings are so regional. You
Yeah.
can't even go in the store and get Tony Chachere's or some
Right.
other local seasonings. You can't get those seasonings. You can't go and
Hmm.
get the little dried shrimp and the little other things you might add in. So guys in the military, they will get their family to mail,
Oh yeah.
like mail me this. And people are asking, man, mail this, send me
Yeah.
some of this and certain kind of sausage and certain
Hmm.
things you would use. You can't just find that anywhere across the nation.
No. And like, I lived in Pennsylvania for a while for graduate school, and I begged my mom to send me beans from Louisiana because the beans from Louisiana are different than beans in other places. And I was only cooking with beans from Louisiana. um, but yeah, it's also, I don't know, every time I go into a restaurant, I also feel like a little bit of pride when I look at the menus, and there's always Cajun this, Creole this, right? Louisiana really set the standard.
I wanted to ask you about that. Like being in San Diego once again, you will see a sign that says Louisiana fried chicken.
Hmm.
When you go in there and look at the food, it's like it doesn't seem like anything that we've ever seen in Louisiana. It's like you see the owners of the restaurant, the people that's cooking the food, like, man, come on, man, y'all don't know what this is, man. Y'all, it's a gimmick.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like, if you're outside of Louisiana and you see Popeyes, be a little bit suspicious. It might not taste like it does on Canal Street in New Orleans, right?
But let's do a connection. It's like when I was in actually Asia in the military. What we think is Chinese food, they're not doing that over
Right.
there.
Right.
They
Yeah.
probably be laughing at us like, "What orange chicken?" Like
Yeah.
General Tao, like what? What's talking about?
Yeah. Like they made that stuff and it's palate it tastes good to Americans, but it's not how they would do it.
And most times they live in the restaurant. They're smart with the economics, right? But if
Hmm.
you see them in the back what they're eating, they're not eating what they're serving. They're
Right.
eating something else.
Right. Right.
They're not going to the buffet and getting a plate of their own food. Like they're doing something else. Y'all eat this. We doing
Yeah.
something else over here.
Right. Right. Um and yeah, a lot of that comes from at least our gumbo, some of those dishes, um, comes out of that herbalism that was part of Conjure because these women were going into the woods to get a lot of these things that make our food taste good, and it was kind of well known that these women were experts at cooking because they had that kind of knowledge of what to place with what, and these weren't things that were being eaten already in America. In some ways, I love Jessica B. Harris because she talks about how really these women who were cooking on plantations, the enslaved women, they kind of Africanized the American palate. They introduced eggplant and black eyed peas and all these dishes, rice, that Europeans weren't eating, right? But started to eat after they had to eat what we cooked.
I want to kind of back it up a little bit. So this show is called Sitting with the Griots, right? I love to ask my guests, how do you feel about being a modern day griot, or for the lady, the grioties for the ladies? How do you feel about that moniker, and do you feel any pressure thinking about that thought?
Um, I don't know. I mean, so it's really kind of floored me to hear how people respond so positively to the book. Like there is a bit of a kind of, oh, there's some responsibility here. Like I'm really trying to pass on knowledge about who we are, and people are taking me at my word. So there is a sort of responsibility I feel there. But there's also this sense of, this book came from me, but in a sense it didn't come from me. And I'm very much aware of how um, I'm leaning on my ancestors to tell the story too.
So when it comes to our wonderful women, our sisters in the community, talk about like how they were able to pass on these recipes and stories like before they could read and write legally. How
Hmm.
are these ladies learning what's a poison and what can help you? How are they learning what time of the year to look for this certain thing? How is that even getting passed? What was
Hmm.
that like?
Hmm. I mean, during slavery, it was passed through. They would literally take their kids out into the woods with them, right? And you're learning from mama. Oh, this plant, not that one. This leaf, not this flower, and stuff like that. And it was really important to learn those things because you could kill people. Like I always tell people, I write about this, but unless you were raised in families that have passed this knowledge down, don't go out there in the woods and pick up stuff. It can kill you. Right. But so some of it was going out to the woods. And I feel like that kind of got lost in kind of mainstream African American communities because a lot of us moved away from the plantations, even moved from the South. So a lot of that knowledge of local flora just got disrupted. Um, some of it came through while they were doing our hair. They would tell us stories about um, why you should burn your hair, or not leave your hair around for other people to poison you. Sometimes it was while they were doing some work like weaving. There were these areas on the plantation where a lot of women would get around, enslaved women. And in those rooms, you'd have generations of women. You'd have the old women who are midwives. You'd have younger women who had just, given birth. And you've got like little children who are too young to go into the field. And in that community, a lot of stories are being passed. Sometimes those stories are passed through the very quilts that enslaved people made, through the symbols on the quilt that remind us of certain gods or certain principles that we believe, or even certain leaves that are important to us. A lot of the patterns were drawn from things that they found in the wood. Um, Right, so a lot of it is storytelling, a lot of it's oral, a lot of it's visual in the hair, in the textiles. Um, and it's interesting to me that even though we may have lost some of the meaning behind these things, we still hold that they're sacred. We still place value in them. So I'm like, it's still kind of going. You might have to, there's a principle called Sankofa of you've got to go back and fetch the stuff from the past that can help you move forward. A lot of us will have to go back and fetch what those meanings were, but we've got clues because we still gravitate towards those things.
I want you to speak to the people right now that's watching that, their grandparents still here, or even the great grandparent maybe, or something like the importance of slowing down and recording your elders, man. Like my grandfather passed last December, but like the last 2 or 3 years of his life, I made it a point to always try to record our simple conversations and
Mm-hmm.
the stories. Like, we are the archivists of our families, all of us, with this technology, right? So talk about the importance of doing that and taking those records.
Yeah. Like really, I'll second that. If your grandparents are still alive, please go talk to them. Right? We have no record of what happened without talking to them, and we need them especially right now because they've lived through the things that we're seeing out in the news right now. They have lived through um, not having certain rights that are under attack right now. So you want to know how to make it through this, you better talk to your grandparents. Um, and sometimes they might be a little bit reticent because they've lived through a lot of trauma. But if they trust you, if you keep pressing them, they'll tell you. And it's important to know those stories. That's how you know that you're gonna make it.
I think whenever you show a genuine interest in it, I
Mhm.
think they come alive because they can't believe you even care about something that was so
Right.
many years ago. Whenever I met Geronimo Pratt one time, and I was getting to the Black Panther party real heavy, I just happened to meet Geronimo Pratt.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
these things I'm reading about happened 30 plus years ago, and I'm this guy all of a sudden asking about these events. He couldn't believe it. Like, he was so
Yeah.
amazed that I even cared about that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes their stories will surprise you. Like I just the other day I was, hanging out with my grandpa, and this is after the book has been written, and you know how black people are. My family has been like, "Ooh, where are we in the book?" and calling each other where they are in the book. So they know that I'm writing these stories about our family. So my grandpa just decided to casually drop that back in the day he blew up. He and his family, his brothers and friends, blew up a plantation grocery store. I'm like, wait a minute, you did what?
We need that story. We need
They
that.
were throwing Molotov cocktails. It's like, wait, I didn't even. Yeah, people talk about burning it down. That generation actually did burn some stuff down.
You're right, man. And like the beauty of it for me was I love non-fiction. I love our history. So I would love to read certain things in books. And they go to
Hmm.
my grandfather to see like how you relate to it. Because
Hmm.
again, they weren't around for so many things. We're just reading about it and watching movies and stuff, but like that was their life. So
Right.
to get those boots on the ground stories is way different than just reading it.
Hmm. Absolutely. And they're funny, and they have this way with language. Like you wanna get like better as a writer, go talk to some old Southern black people. They have a way with words.
So inquiring minds want to know. I've been trying to sell this debate for years. Me and my friends. Do you say pecan, pecan, or praline? You kind of said it earlier, but I'm gonna see what you're gonna say. I don't know if you had a slip or what earlier. So what do you say?
It depends on where you are for me. So if you're in the places where I'm from, which are very rural, which aren't really big cities, a lot of my family is from those few small towns in between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. We say pecan candy. But if you go to New Orleans, you got to say praline. People won't know what you're talking about. Right now, maybe they would in black communities, but you're like in the French Quarter. I don't think they know what pecan candy is.
Because back to the restaurants, they'd be like, "Well, today's dessert we got pecan pie." I'm like, I don't want it. Whatever that is, I don't want pecan pie.
Right. Oh yeah.
But
Now.
tell us about the importance of the candy lane in the black community. And then tell us about like the cost of not really having that spirit as much in today's time. That
Mhm.
candy lady was monumental. We call them cold cups, cold
Yeah.
cups. Say little trinkets, little eat it like the
Yeah.
importance of that.
Yeah. Yeah. We called them Dixie cups. Yeah. And getting the red one was always like such a big deal. But I think they also taught us a lot about money, how to manage money, and the importance of really hustling, having these side operations to make some money, have some money on you. They were usually willing to help out the community. They were the ones who, will give money to the church to help the kids for vacation Bible school. But more than anything, I think just having an elder there who um, could watch over the children while the parents were at work, and kind of while they're watching over the children, tell them these stories. That was so valuable. Um, it makes me sad to think that there aren't that many candy ladies still. I even saw someone post like, "Where are the candy ladies?" Um, I don't know. That makes me sad
Yes,
because
you gotta think. I'll be 44 in a couple months, right? So
yeah,
like a lot of my classmates, like we're the grandparents now. But most
right.
of us, our generation, we still want to go out. We go on the
Yes,
brunch. We go and take
yes,
flights. We go to Beyonce. Like we not sitting at home with the kids and just all right, y'all go
yeah,
ahead. I got to like no, we trying to we outside.
yeah.
We not trying to sit around and just watch Prices Right and we're not doing that.
No. Oh, so we should be the candy ladies now.
Well, think about it. It is us. Like whenever I think about my favorite teachers, they were
Yeah,
like my age now.
yeah,
My favorite basketball coaches, they were my age now. Like I'm like, wait a minute. Like we are the OGs. Like
mm, mm,
we're the ones of the community now, but we're not even thinking about that. We're not
yeah,
even seeing that. You know?
yeah. And there is like really strained relationships between us and the youth. And I'm still trying to get to the bottom of that. I'm a teacher, so I'm dealing with 19, 20-year olds most of my days, and I don't understand them anymore. um, and it breaks my heart that they
Yes,
know so little.
yes,
Like
yes.
like I mentioned the Haitian Revolution, and they're and just blank stares. They don't know what that is. I'm like, you don't know about the only successful slave revolt in the Western Hemisphere. You don't know that. You don't know what's possible.
I got one better for you. I got one better. So at my job, most of my coworkers in their 20s, and one young lady mentioned something about a strap for a whole different reason. The other woman thought she meant a slave whip.
Oh
But
my
she
god.
said, you mean like the 1970s? I'm like, the 1970s is not slave. Like, that's not that long ago.
Right.
1970s. But she was serious. 1970s? I'm like, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, anything past to earlier than the 2000s is, you know, yeah. But it does me good to see so many young people listening to the book. And I've seen people, when they're posting on Facebook or Instagram saying, I had to look a whole bunch of stuff up. Like, good, you learning some things.
I think a person like Beyonce is good for this generation when it
Yeah.
comes to a lot of her visuals, her fashion, her
Mhm.
art. It's like
Mhm.
a history being in visual
Oh,
form.
yeah.
You know, the Black Panther Party, she did the formation and
Yep.
the Orishas, and she doing these different cultural things. Of course, the
Mhm.
cowboy stuff lately. Like, I think she is kind of like making that young generation realize, oh,
Mhm.
that's Angela Davis. Oh, that's
Yes. Oh, they don't even know who Angela Davis is. I forgot. Oh, yeah.
because Beyonce put the black jacket on and the
Right.
formation, and then the next day, all the ladies like, I'm going to work with my afro tomorrow, and they finally seeing Asada Shakur, and they finally seeing Erica Huggins. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if that's what it takes. That's
Yeah.
what it takes. Yeah.
Yeah. She really has put out that education. I mean, and Cowboy Carter is really an education. Whew. She even like stopping tracks and just talking. Like, let me explain this to you.
Yes, yes. Um, your book made me realize something. So our candy ladies, the midwives, the hairdressers, like as they lost those professions, right? These things got modernized, and now you got to pass a state board test to do hair, and
Hmm.
you got to have the FDA stuff to do food. Like we lost so much economic power in the community because those ladies, like you said, they were making money, they were making this stretch, but now it was a big loss to us as a community. I thought about that. It's going through this book. So speak about that a little.
I mean, one of the most striking things to me is how during Jim Crow, you had granny midwives who, they were the ones who would, you wouldn't go to the doctor. You go to a granny midwife, and she would give you these herbs and roots and salves and whatnot. She was also the person who was delivering babies, both black and white, in the South because there weren't many hospitals in the South. It was rural. Um, and one of the really powerful things about having granny midwives during Jim Crow is that when they started to work with the medical system, you had an advocate in the room with you when you were going to the doctors. And I really feel the loss of that as a Black woman going to the doctors, right? You kind of have to fight to get doctors to listen to you. Um, but just imagine how much more powerful it would be if you had this woman who had all this medical knowledge, this Black woman going to the doctor with you and, advocating on your behalf. Like, that's a huge loss. You think about how many Black women have horror stories about maternal health. It's like, yeah, we lost a really powerful advocate who was watching out for our health.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So I want to ask you a question about today's time. We have all of this AI technology. We have other things now. Do you believe in the age of AI? People go online for a remedy instead of going to their elders. How do you see the Black woman, the Conjure woman, evolving with today's technology?
That's a funny question. I kind of worry about people who like ask GPT about health. I get really worried um, because sometimes you really do need to talk to a person. um, and I think a lot of us kind of still are figuring out how AI works, and we don't. AI doesn't always track truth. It gives us back what we've put into it, which is why it's good to talk to a person when you're dealing with health stuff. Um, at the same time, I like um, how much of the stuff is digitized because the truth is, a lot of us have strained relationships with our grandparents, with our great grandparents, but we still want to get that info. And that's one way that you can is reading these books, is finding these interviews online and whatnot. So I get sometimes you need to have electronic access to this stuff. Um, I feel the same way about novels. Toni Morrison was that person for me. A lot of stuff that I learned about Conjure also came from reading Toni Morrison, who had also done this research. So I get that sometimes there are things that you don't get directly from your family. You kind of need a broader network. Um, and that also reflects how in West Africa, it's not just on the parents, it's on the community. And there's like an extended network. You've got your aunties and your uncles, maybe your parents weren't so great, but you got your cousins who's gonna help you through. And I kind of think of online can be that kind of community for you.
Do you think it's like us, like getting inside of the machine, as they say, like us training the algorithm in our culture, our ways of being, tradition, us training it to where we're part of the machine now, not just being used, if you will.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's also kind of scary. But I think that's also why we need a lot of Black people in the tech world because we need Black people putting that information in, Black people teaching these machines. Otherwise, these machines are just going to pick up on the racism and sexism that's already out there and reinforce that.
With everything going on right now with the whole Jimmy Fallon thing and freedom of speech thing, I'm on multiple podcasts, by the way, but like I talk about the need for our own infrastructure, our own platforms, totally, because at the end of the day, somebody owns all these platforms. Whenever
Yeah.
they want to pull the plug, they can, and everything gonna be lost. So we need our own. You said guys in tech, guys that do coding and all the
Mhm.
things to have our own infrastructure.
Mhm. Mhm. I mean, we saw it happen with Black Twitter. That used to be a thing. Yeah. Mm.
So my last question is a brand new question I got from my authors. Right,
Okay.
you mentioned earlier about reading so many books to write this one book. The question is, how do you read? I know all of us have different methods and tricks and things that they do. How do you read, Professor?
Huh. Nobody's ever asked me that question before. Um, so usually when I'm reading a book, it's a very quick skim and then another deep dive into the book. I kind of need to have the whole before I can really break apart arguments and what's going on in the book. So I usually read twice, and I think that's a good rule for people. Read something twice. It's very easy to mistake what someone's saying and misread. So I read twice. I have a very extensive note-taking system that requires
I
me
gotta hear this. I gotta hear this. I love to nerd out about the process. I'm a very process person. So.
Oh, like, my partner likes to make fun of me because I have so many devices, but I've got like my laptop for, the Word documents that's just these are the quotes or kind of broad outlines of history that I'm tracking in books. But I also have like an electronic notebook that I'm using to kind of draw out characters because, it's a nonfiction book, but I tried to write it as a narrative. So you've got to pay attention to like the storytelling elements as well. So that's just like two things that I have to do and go back and forth. I also have um, an electronic typewriter that I like to use to actually draft the book. And I like to use that because I don't get distracted. Like there isn't online or isn't Facebook or anything on that. It's just a typewriter. Yeah. So that's like three different things that I've got to do. But I would say mostly reading multiple times and taking notes.
That question came to me because last night I was playing the podcast with the brother, the political prisoner Momia Abu Jamal, and Mark Lamont here asked him about his reading practices. He had a
Mhm.
whole very specific thing he was talking about. But I thought about it to myself, like we all read so differently,
Yeah.
but there are always things you can pull out and learn
Yeah.
from it. So I want to ask my guests going forward, like, how do you read? We see these wonderful books you're writing, but
Yeah.
it takes a lot of good reading to
It
write
does.
that well. So that's where
It
they came
does.
from.
Yeah.
And I be on reading something twice because for all of my interview guests, I try to find the audio book and have the physical book. So like the audio, I can at least get through the whole book at least. And now
Right.
the physical book, I'm going like pick apart and make notes and make my questions and
Mhm.
kind of how
Mhm.
I do that for the show.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And I used to be a poet, so I'm always looking for the spaces in between the words. That's kind of why I need to read twice because I'm looking for if there are multiple is there another meaning that's hidden behind the sentence or that the author was trying to say many things, not just one thing. So I'm always kind of open to that as well. Toni Morrison does a lot of that too.
So wait a minute, you a poet? I had no idea. I love poetry. So do you have any pieces you have memorized like off your head? You have any
No,
notes around you? Like I want to hear something.
not not anymore. Not anymore. I used to be a spoken word poet. If you know,
Wow.
but that was many many decades ago.
Well,
And
well, how does that poetry foundation, how does that spill into your actual nonfiction writing? Because people think that nonfiction is dry, is boring, it's just stats, facts, dates, names, but like you, Dr. Imani Perry, Honore Jeffers, like all of these people, like you make beautiful nonfiction, make it so poetic and make it so attractive. So how's that transition?
mhm. Well, I think that poetry teaches you to have an eye for metaphor, which is great when you're writing. But for me, poetry also helps me to slow down and get inside of something. So it helps me figure out what's it smell like, what's it look like, what's it taste like, even sometimes. And those are the sort of elements that you need for storytelling. If you want to, even if it's a true story, you still want to be able to place people there at the scene. And poetry, I think, has really taught me how to do that.
So will there be a book of poetry in the future from you? Can we expect a book of poetry?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I know that the book is good. Never quite know if the poetry is what I think it is. But maybe one day.
I only ask because a lot of us poets always have like composition books full of pieces. We have
Oh yeah.
phones full of pieces. So like you have 100 pieces in your phone alone. So it's like
Right.
You got to put it in a book format, but the material is most times there.
Oh yeah, I've got lots of poems. I don't know if they'll ever be published, but that's okay. They're for me.
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for saying yes to the show. I'm always grateful to get a yes, appreciative, and this is not easy to get guests. People might think it is. So thank you for coming to bless my platform. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, 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 yes. Anybody watching this, tune in tomorrow at 3 o'clock. I have Dr. Ian Smith on here talking about his brand new book of fiction. See you tomorrow, guests. Don't leave, my sister.